Welcome to the Neo Self-Care Podcast. I am your host, Vashti Maya, and here we just kind of talk about self-care, mental health, your spirit, your mind, and your body, and how it all formulates to this new form of self-care. So I hope that you guys enjoy this, and let's get right into it. All right, so we are on episode 1 for the 2023 year on the Neo Self-Care Podcast. So I really want to open up this podcast just speaking on self-care a little bit. I have found that people often confuse self-care with self-maintenance, which is getting your nails done, getting a massage, buying new clothes, getting your hair done. While all those things do obviously contribute to the self, it is a form of self-maintenance rather than self-care. I have found also that some people kind of look at self-care as self-love, where it's just like, honoring yourself, trusting yourself, believing that, you have the ability to change what you need in your life to bring about the type of life that you want. And while that is also some type of form of self-care, it is not the type of self-care that I want to get into. The Neo Self-Care Podcast is really about reintroducing what it means to have self-care. It is a new form or a revived form of self-care. So self-care is making that space for yourself. It is honoring your feelings as a whole, not just when you feel good, but when you feel bad as well. It's about allowing room to grow, allowing room to change, and more so allowing room for reflection. When you're able to look at your life and reflect on the things that may not be so great without judgment, but more so looking at it to try to figure out how can you be better? How can you do better? What is the root cause? What are those limited beliefs? When you're able to really identify yourself from that angle, you are practicing self-care. It's almost like you're caring enough about yourself to identify those deep layers. You're caring about yourself enough to understand, where did these deep layers come from? Have they always been here? Is this something that I believe about myself? Or is this something that someone has placed upon me that I have adopted as a belief? So self-care, while it is self-maintenance and while it is self-love, the bigger picture of it all is self-care. And that's what I really would like to talk about with you guys today. It's kind of just going to be a what is self-care type of conversation. As we go on throughout the year with the podcast, we'll definitely hit on different tips, tricks, techniques, topics, anything of that nature to, hone it down to particular things. But as a whole today, I really want to just talk about self-care. So, how can you practice self-care on a small scale? Let's talk about the small scale, and then we'll work our way up into the major scales. One way to practice your self-care is journaling. Now, journaling is not only how am I feeling today? What's happened yesterday? What happened yesterday that I find myself now dealing with today? While it is reflection, 100%, it is also certain prompts, certain things, certain patterns that you've noticed, and really questioning, honing down on these particular topics and questioning, why do I do these things? Why do I feel these things? What is something or the earliest memory that I have that also related to this particular feeling? So while you can journal and should journal 100% your feelings, thoughts, and ideas, so that you can identify a common pattern or common traits, it's also very beneficial to hit on certain prompts. That way, you don't only give yourself surface level answers, but you're able to dive deeper in understanding why you do certain things or how you feel about certain things. That way you can look at it as a whole, which I find to be very beneficial and important in the self-care process. Another form of self-care is honoring your truths, honoring how you feel. So if you're doing something that perhaps somebody else may look at and not agree with and say, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't say that or anything of that nature, where it's like they're telling you how to feel, Honoring your self-care is trusting in your inner belief system, your inner intuition, your inner guidance system. So it's living for yourself. If you're not harming yourself or causing harm to anyone else, then you should be living in your freedom. You should be living in your truth. You should be thriving in your truth. When you are honoring yourself, you are caring for yourself on such a profound level that you will do what feels right to you. Now, does this mean that you cannot ask for advice or that you should always put yourself first? I mean, that sounds weird, but you should always put yourself first. But does this mean that you just disregard everybody else all the time? No. But it's all based upon how you feel. It's all based upon what feels right to you first. Maybe somebody wants you to go to school and you don't want to go to school. Maybe you find joy in doing a certain hobby that you want to turn into a profession without school being necessary. If you choose to go to school anyway because someone else is telling you to, you're not honoring yourself. You're not honoring how you truly feel, which is totally different from looking to say, okay, well, let me see how education can benefit what I already want to do. That's totally different. And this is just an example. It does not have to be school. It can be something as big as you wanting to move and someone is putting their own fears and their own doubts on you by saying, oh, if you move there, there's so much crime happening there, or you're not going to know anybody there, or what are you going to do there? And then you end up not going, even though your insides was screaming at you should have moved here. You know what I mean? Like that's a form of self-care. That's a form of really taking the time to react with your inner guidance system, connecting with yourself, meditating, seeking the answers within first before going out looking for someone else's opinion. Self-care is not you denying the help of other people, but it is you trusting yourself or building a relationship with yourself that is so in tune and so direct that you know if you have an intuitive nudge or an intuitive pull to go towards a certain direction, it is for a positive or teachable reason. And it's about honoring it and letting go of the fear and letting go of the judgment, the doubts, and everything else attached to it to move towards that thing that you're being called for. So ultimately, we are going to talk about different ways to connect with your self-care, which, like I mentioned, is about self-love. It is about self-maintenance, and we're going to hit on a couple things of that as well. But it was all for you really understanding, the direction that this is going in. Self-care has to do with you, going to therapy. If you feel like you need to go to therapy, if you feel like that there's some traumas that you are ready to deal with and release, or you have noticed your limited beliefs and it's not enough to do it on your own, going into therapy for the sake of growth, for the sake of healing, that is a form of self-care. Understanding like, hey, I have some moments where I just don't feel that great. I have some moments where I feel anxious, where I feel depressed, or my mental health is bothering me. Those are all signs of you probably needing to realign yourself, you potentially needing to put your care for yourself first, and actively working on those things will bring about the self-care that you're looking for. And it is a form of self-care. So, while you can go shopping and buy some new shoes and hashtag self-care, or while you can go get your nails done, toes done, massage it up, hashtag self-care, that's all perfect. That's all great. That is all underneath the umbrella. But truth self-care starts in the mind, radiates through your body, which connects you to your soul. That is true self-care. That is what we're going to be talking about on this podcast. I'm really excited. I hope that it brings you guys some type of joy or something that you're looking for that you could definitely take away from here. I will have different people coming in, different guests coming in, speaking on certain topics, always taking you all suggestions and topics as well, because that's what I love to do the most. I love to connect with you, to talk about things that you find important and how you can relate it right back to yourself. Now, I do want to make the note that being conscious of how you utilize your self-care techniques does not mean that you cut off the rest of the world. Ultimately, I believe in order for you to be the best person for other people, you have to become a best version of yourself. This does not mean that you have to be perfect, but it does mean that you have to be progressing. It does mean that you do have to put yourself on a higher pedestal so that you can be who you need to be the best mother, to be the best, father if you're a man listening, to be the best partner, to be the best sibling, you know what I mean? It's all about you embodying your fullest potential, or at least something close to it, so that you can pass the same energy to everyone that you come in contact with. Because if you're not your best person, if you're not your best, and emphasis is on your best, it's not what somebody else believes your best is, it's about what you truly believe and know and require your best to be. If you're not being the best that you can be, then you cannot be the best for other people. And that's why self-care is important. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. This is just episode 1. I will release weekly episodes every Tuesdays, and I hope that this really sets the tone for you guys, especially it still being the beginning of the 2023 year. And again, if you have any questions, certain topics, anything that you'd like for me to cover, feel free to send me a message on my Instagram. Feel free to send me an email. All of that will be inside of the description box for whatever podcast station you're listening to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Android, anything in between. So I do appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you guys next week. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Vashti M-A-A. All right, that's VASHTI.MAA. Vashti Maya. Love you guys. Bye.